Boston daydreaming about all the compliments and awards I'd receive as I boarded the shuttle flight at LaGuardia Airport to meet correspondent Mike Wallace for an interview with the whistleblower John Loftus. I was less than 2 years into the job, still on probation, but I hoped the story would get me a permanent position. This was the story that I felt would show everyone at 60 Minutes that I belonged. On the flight, I worked on the interview questions and a script for the story. After the plane landed, I descended the ramp and felt the wonderful spring day sun. I relaxed for a moment until I saw the marble obelisk of the Washington Monument. Out of habit, I had flown to Washington as I had done countless times before. The problem was I was supposed to be in Boston. No one had checked my ticket at the New York airport, and I had tuned out all the announcements made on the plane. I was in Washington when Mike Wallace was on his way to Boston. Wallace was the show's top correspondent. He didn't have the patience to wait for a urinal to open in a crowded bathroom. I thought, he will kill me, then fire me, though maybe not in that order. I ran back into the terminal, found a flight to Boston, and purchased a ticket at the gate. Cell phones were not yet invented, so I ran to a phone booth and threw in quarters. I called the cameraman and said I had an emergency and I was running late. "Tell Wallace, but don't start without me," I said. Then I hung up and quickly boarded the plane. I didn't want a cameraman to explain why the 28-year-old producer just ended up in the wrong airport. The Eastern flight slowly taxied on the runway. Faster, faster, I thought. After a slight delay, the plane took off. In the air, it seemed to be flying at half speed. I couldn't contain myself. I got up and went to the cockpit door. This was way before 9/11. Pilots would sometimes leave the doors open and even give impromptu tours while the plane was in the air. I knocked, and a pilot pushed the door open. "Hi, my name is Ira, and I am a 60 Minutes producer. I boarded the wrong flight this morning and ended up in Washington when I should have been in Boston. Mike Wallace is waiting for me, and I'm really late. Is there any way you guys could fly faster so I won't lose my job?" The pilots looked at each other. I think at first they thought I was joking, but they soon realized I was serious. "You want us to fly faster?" one pilot asked. "Yes, even 5 minutes sooner would make a huge difference. Mike Wallace has no patience, and he'll fire me." "We'll see what we can do," the pilot said. I went back to my seat and I heard the engine revving louder. The plane actually seemed to be flying faster. We landed 15 minutes early. I ran to a pay phone and called Wallace. I explained what happened. "You better get your ass here fast," he said, but he didn't fire me. Turns out being late had worked in my favor. Mike spent his time taking pictures and signing autographs for the law firm staff. The adulation from strangers was like a drug for him and put him in a good mood. I survived that day, but there would be many other precarious days to come. When our story aired a few weeks later, it made front-page news in nearly every paper in the country and would lead to my first Emmy. But more importantly, I had earned my first "Hey Mildred" compliment from executive producer and 60 Minutes creator Don Hewitt. Mildred was the name of Hewitt's high school sweetheart. He used her name interchangeably to compliment the story or to say it was too complicated for Mildred to understand. In this case, he used the "Hey Mildred" to say the Nazi story would get a viewer to jump up and shout to his wife or companion, "Hey Mildred, come over here and watch this story, you won't believe it." That's what you would wanted a TV couch potato to say when 60 Minutes was on. It was the job of producers like me to find those stories. Over the ensuing years, I would earn quite a few "Hey Mildreds." I received more awards than almost any producer in TV news, including multiple Peabody and DuPont Awards and 24 Emmys. I won 6 Investigative Reporters and Editors Awards, more than Washington Post editor Bob Woodward. But the pressure involved in ascending that award stage and creating epic TV was insane and unreal. The verbal harassment I experienced from Mike Wallace and other TV bigshots was, in a word, criminal. But I endured all that abuse, in part out of fear, but mostly out of ambition. I loved being a 60 Minutes producer, and if that meant getting scolded or demeaned, I took that treatment as part of the job description. At the time, it all seemed worth it because being a 60 Minutes producer was like being a spy with a license to kill. 60 Minutes was the TV news magazine that most Americans relied on to stay informed. Its willingness to challenge authority impacted the public consciousness.